Netanyahu is trying to draw the U.S. into a war with Iran. If such a war occurs, it would be devastating, first to Israel, by the way, but possibly escalating to world war. Iran has Russia as an ally. It would open a second front of the U.S. war with Russia, in addition to Ukraine. Netanyahu has been trying for this for 30 years. He has been clear about it, that the United States should go to war with Iran for Israel's sake.
This isn't any speculation, but a reality unfolding before our eyes. Recent reports from Israeli Channel 14 reveal that Israel's retaliation against Iran will be significant, likely causing Iran to respond and potentially dragging the Americans into a conflict that could reshape the global order as we know it. For 3 decades, Benjamin Netanyahu has orchestrated a careful strategy of manipulation, successfully pushing the United States into conflicts that served his interpretation of Israeli security interests. This isn't just about recent events, it's about a calculated long-term campaign that has fundamentally shaped Middle Eastern politics and American foreign policy. Consider the Iraq War, a conflict that, as more analysts examine the events of the past 24 years, increasingly appears to have been influenced by Netanyahu's strategic objectives. The same pattern emerged in Syria, where a CIA operation to overthrow the Syrian government aligned perfectly with Netanyahu's regional aspirations. Time and again, the United States has followed Netanyahu's lead, often to its own detriment. The strategy is simple but ambitious. Netanyahu believes that to make Israel truly safe, it's not enough to defeat immediate threats like Hamas or Hezbollah. Instead, he aims to neutralize the countries that support these organizations. This approach has led to a series of devastating conflicts, each bringing us closer to the ultimate confrontation he's always wanted, a war with Iran. The current situation is rapidly approaching a critical point. Netanyahu has reportedly approved attack plans against Iran, with implementation expected before the U.S. elections. This timing is more than coincidental. It's a calculated move to exploit perceived American political vulnerabilities. Recent events underscore the volatile nature of the situation. Just days ago, 4 young IDF soldiers, each just 19 years old, were killed when a Hezbollah missile struck deep inside Israeli territory. Another 78 of their colleagues, including a general, were severely injured. These casualties weren't at the Lebanese border. They occurred well within Israel, demonstrating the increasing range and accuracy of enemy capabilities. Israel's response has been characteristically aggressive, with bombing campaigns throughout Lebanon, including strikes on villages in the north, attacks in Beirut, and operations along the southern border. In an unprecedented escalation, Israeli forces have even attacked United Nations peacekeepers, a move that demonstrates a dangerous disregard for international law and peacekeeping efforts. The subsequent decision to declare the UN Secretary-General persona non grata further isolates Israel diplomatically, signaling a state that increasingly sees itself as above international norms and accountability. This pattern of escalation reveals a broader strategy. Israel is deliberately projecting an image of a state willing to violate any norm, attack any target, and dismiss any international criticism. The message is clear. Israel is willing to escalate, regardless of international law or civilian casualties. But this approach carries unprecedented risks in the current regional environment, where adversaries have developed capabilities far beyond what Israel faced in previous conflicts. What Netanyahu and his supporters consistently underestimate is Iran's current military capabilities. This isn't the same Iran of 30 years ago. Today, Iran possesses advanced ballistic missile systems, including hypersonic missiles that cannot be intercepted by current anti-missile defense systems. These weapons have the potential to strike at core population centers and strategic infrastructure throughout Israel. The scale of Iran's arsenal is staggering. Military analysts estimate they possess tens of thousands of missiles of varying ranges and capabilities. Over the past 3 decades, while Netanyahu was focused on promoting conflicts, Iran was steadily building its technological and military capabilities. They've developed sophisticated drone programs, advanced cyber warfare capabilities, and a robust domestic defense industry that reduces their vulnerability vulnerability to international sanctions. Moreover, Iran's diplomatic stance stands in stark contrast to Netanyahu's warmongering. Iranian leaders have repeatedly expressed their desire to restore diplomatic relations with the United States and return to the JCPOA nuclear agreement, the very agreement that Trump abandoned and Biden failed to restore. They've embarked on diplomatic tours, consistently messaging their desire to avoid war while maintaining their right to defend their interests. Iran's regional influence extends far beyond its borders through a network of allied groups and sympathetic populations across the Middle East. This network, often referred to as the Axis of Resistance, includes powerful forces in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Any conflict with Iran would likely activate this entire network, creating multiple fronts that neither Israel nor the United States is prepared to handle simultaneously. Most critically, Iran's alliance with Russia provides it with a powerful strategic backdrop. Any conflict with Iran risks drawing in Russian support, potentially creating a devastating multi-front war that could stretch from Eastern Europe to the Middle East. Russian military technology and expertise have significantly enhanced Iran's defensive capabilities, particularly in areas of air defense and electronic warfare. The United States finds itself in an increasingly precarious position. Legally, it cannot attack another country unless obliged by treaty, which it doesn't have with Israel, or unless facing an imminent threat, which Iran decidedly does not pose. Yet Netanyahu seems confident he can draw America into conflict regardless of these constraints. The financial costs of previous Middle East interventions influenced by Netanyahu have been staggering. The Iraq War alone cost American taxpayers over $2 trillion, while the Syrian intervention drained billions more from U.S. coffers. These conflicts have stretched American military resources thin, with ongoing commitments in multiple regions limiting operational flexibility for any new major conflict. The recent deployment of a THAAD unit to Israel illustrates this complexity. The U.S. only owns 7 of these systems, and this one requires about 100 American troops to operate it. While presented as a defensive measure, this deployment puts American personnel directly in harm's way. More importantly, the system's capabilities are limited. It can only intercept 48 missiles, a fraction of what Iran could potentially launch. Historical patterns show how consistently the U.S. has followed Netanyahu's lead, often against its own strategic interests. From the Iraq War to the Syrian conflict, from the abandonment of the Iran nuclear deal to the current crisis, American foreign policy has frequently aligned with Netanyahu's preferences rather than U.S. national security needs. This pattern has cost America not just financially, but in terms of global credibility and strategic positioning. The political dynamics in Washington further complicate matters. Congress is unlikely to pause their campaign activities to debate military action, leaving critical decisions in the hands of a president who appears more concerned with Netanyahu's wishes and domestic political implications than America's strategic interests. The potential for global escalation cannot be overstated. A conflict with Iran would immediately affect multiple ongoing crises, particularly the war in Ukraine. Russia, already engaged against NATO interests in Eastern Europe, would likely view an attack on its ally Iran as an opportunity to escalate across multiple fronts. The assumption of American military invincibility, similar to miscalculations in Ukraine where 600,000 lives have been lost, could prove catastrophic. The world has changed. Military superiority is no longer absolute. Modern warfare capabilities have evolved to the point where even technologically advanced nations must recognize their vulnerabilities. Netanyahu's strategy isn't just morally questionable, it's fundamentally flawed. His track record of military and strategic advice has been consistently wrong. He promised that invading Iraq would create security for the U.S. and the region. He insisted regime change in Syria would bring stability. Each prediction has proven not just incorrect, but catastrophically wrong. His 2002 testimony before Congress, where he guaranteed that removing Saddam Hussein would bring regional stability, led to America's most costly military intervention since Vietnam. His predictions about Iran's nuclear program have been consistently inaccurate, with repeated claims about Iran being months away from a nuclear weapon spanning decades. His advocacy for intervention in Syria helped prolong a devastating civil war that destabilized the entire region. The impact on Israeli domestic politics has been equally destructive. Netanyahu's policies have deepened social divisions, weakened democratic institutions, and created unprecedented political instability. The current coalition government, held together mainly by hawkish policies and fear-mongering about external threats, represents the most extreme right-wing government experiment in Israel's history. Ironically, Israel is less secure today than at any point since its founding. Netanyahu's aggressive policies and reliance on military solutions have isolated Israel, while strengthening and unifying its opponents. His current push for confrontation with Iran represents the potential culmination of this failed strategy, a miscalculation that could prove existential for Israel itself. We stand at a critical juncture where one leader's obsession with military solutions threatens to unleash global chaos. The assumption that Iran will back down when attacked, or that American military power can guarantee victory, represents dangerous wishful thinking in an age of advanced military capabilities and complex global alliances. The world has moved beyond the era where cavalry charges and technological superiority alone can determine military outcomes. We face the very real possibility of World War III, a conflict that would treat no nation on this planet kindly. The solution lies not in escalation, but in diplomatic engagement, not in military confrontation, but in strategic dialogue. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Netanyahu succeeds in triggering this conflict, the consequences won't be limited to Israel and Iran. The resulting chaos could engulf the entire world in a conflict from which there may be no easy return. The time for preventing this catastrophe is running out, and the world's response in these critical moments may determine the future of global peace. If you enjoy these type of videos, please leave a like and subscribe for more content.